Okay, so it's 1:05, so I'll go ahead and get started to honor everyone's time. And forgive me, folks in the room, if I'm looking at the computer. I'm trying to do two slides today. So Velina Maʻi, welcome everybody for joining us for this special presentation. Before we begin, please make sure you've signed in either on our paper forms here or in the sign-in using the Google form in the chat. We also want to inform you that this presentation is being recorded and will be posted to the Hawaiian Center's YouTube channel so that others can learn from what we learned today. So if you are on the Zoom, you can turn off your camera if you prefer not to be shown. Please also make sure that your mic is muted until the opportunity to speak is provided at the end of the presentation. And if you do have any questions during the presentation, feel free to add them to the chat and we'll address them at the end. Aloha kako, my name is Kalealoha Lamho. I am the coordinator of the Hulili Kukui Hawaiian Center at Honolulu Community College. And today's event is sponsored by the college's Hulili Kukui Hawaiian Center, Ola Niuhelewai Project, Committee on Social Equity, and Committee on Student Affairs. All sponsors are committed to addressing issues that impact equity and success on campus. And today we will be learning more about the issue of period poverty. I am pleased to welcome our special guest speakers from the nonprofit organization Maʻi Movement. The mission of Maʻi Movement is to provide and distribute free menstrual products to menstruators in need and advocate for systemic change in the government, schools, and community to end period poverty in Hawaii. Today, we are joined by Maʻi Movement co-founder Nikki-Ann and university coordinator here in the center, I don't know if you, Arabella Molina. Welcome to our guest speakers, and I'm going to hand it over to Nikki.
Aloha, everyone, and mahalo Kale for such a beautiful introduction. Today, we will be presenting on building equity, menstrual equity in schools, and what that means for your campus. So let's just jump right into it. Actually, I have to thank you, Kale. You have introduced us so beautifully, but I'm just gonna, do a quick kind of background on who we are. So my sisters, Brandy and Jamie and I, unfortunately, they couldn't be with us today, but, we started Maʻi Movement at the end of 2020. My sister, Brandy, was working in Native Hawaiian Health on Hawaii Island. And, we were talking about ways that we could support the community. I had long been passionate about menstrual equity and period poverty from the first time I read about, girls and women in Tanzania dealing with it. Now, at that time, I was living overseas, and I thought, the issue of period poverty was very much a third world developing country problem. But, as a mother, as a woman, as a menstruator myself, it was really an issue that it was like a punch to the gut to think, how could something so normal, keep people from living their lives fully, from going to school, from going to work? And so it was, an issue that I was very passionate about. And I would often talk to my sister, Brandy, about, how we can support girls, women, and other menstruators. So it was just, casual call like this. We were talking story, and she was on a Zoom with a diaper bank, because of the nature of her work. During the pandemic, everyone was coming out, supporting, supporting with resources for keiki to kupuna. And it was on one of these Zoom calls that it hit her, is anybody doing anything about period poverty? So we came together. We looked at the issue and what was happening locally. Because we couldn't find anything, we said, we have to do something. Even though none of us had any nonprofit or startup experience, it was really something that called to us, and we really felt that this was our kuleana to the community. So we started Maʻi Movement, and I'm very happy and proud and honored to also have Bella on our team as well. She had actually come to us. She reached out to say if we had any internship opportunities. So while she was doing her senior project, she interned with us for a semester and then stayed on as a volunteer. And I joke with her that at this point, she's basically a fourth sister to us. So she is representing us in person and will also be available for any questions. Before we jump into the whole presentation, I want to just take a step back so that everybody is on the same level of understanding. So I would first just like to define what is period poverty. You may have heard this term before. For some of you, it may be the first time. Period poverty is the limited or inadequate access to menstrual products or education. Now, as the name suggests, poverty, everybody thinks money. So naturally, yes, financial constraints is one of the factors, but it's not the only reason for this state of menstrual equity. It's also a result of social and cultural stigmas and associated with menstruation. So a very simple example, I have been there myself, or I've done this too, is if you have to change your pad or your tampon, you crumple up your pad, you put it in your pocket, or, try to hide it in your jacket and you run to the bathroom. So hiding menstruation, the fact that you are on your period, right? That is a form of social and cultural stigma that's placed on menstruation. Another is inadequate access to period-friendly sanitation facilities. So having clean bathrooms or running water. As I shared with you, I first learned about period poverty in the context of developing countries. But if you think, what's happening in our islands, right? All across the state, there's a rising houseless population. So it's also affecting anybody that's in unstable housing or in any kind of transitional shelters. So the lack of clean bathrooms to take care of their menstruation, and also having clean running water that's readily available at any time. Now, period poverty is intertwined with many societal issues. So I really love this diagram. It wasn't done by me. It was done by a professor at Columbia. But I liked it because it shows all the intersections of these societal injustices and how it impacts menstruation. So you have a gender injustice, socioeconomic, and also racial injustice. And I'll go into some local data to show how all of that also plays out. Period poverty disproportionately affects students, low income and houseless girls and women, and gender nonconforming individuals, and those that are also incarcerated. So in our work, what we try to do, right, as best as we can, is address all these different societal issues and how we function. So, there's no one solution to solving the issue of period poverty. So we have built Maʻi movement on 3 pillars, basically. The first are services. So today we have, actually, this is I think this is the first time we've ever done an outreach like this. So I'm really excited, but we're able to, bring our 2 services, which are Maʻi Care Kits. So these are our disposable packs of different products. There's wipes, there's tampons, liners, pads, because everybody, will malama their maʻi in their own way, and we do respect that. But we also have our Sustainable Maʻi program. Now, this is where we offer education around how to use reusable products. We recognize very early on that that there are barriers to sustainable products, right? Cost. If you can't afford a pack of pads, it's very hard to spend $30 on a cup, or $10 on one pair of underwear when you may need multiple to carry you over over your cycle. So we have our cloth pads, cups, and we also have our menstrual underwear. So these are our services. We do distribute to organizations. So we have partner organizations across the state, but another service, because we also recognize very early on that not everyone will go to a partner organization for help. So we also mail directly to anybody in the state. We do have one exception to that rule. We have partnered with an organization like Hugs that supports families who have to travel to the continent for medical treatment. So if you've ever heard of the Ronald McDonald House, they also have facilities there. And that's where we still try to support local people that may have to go outside of the state. The next is education. Now, we are not medical professionals. We do not proclaim to be, but education is so important to this. You know, I think you can always be a lifelong learner when it comes to menstruation. I know I am always learning. You know, your body changes, how you menstruate also changes as you grow older. So, you know, we meet with different local medical professionals, so child psychologists, OBGYNs, midwives, and we created gender inclusive and locally inspired education. So we do have booklets that are available, and Bella has some of them, so you can take a look at it. It had originally started as kind of a how-to guide for all the sustainable products, but when we put it together, you know, you can't talk about how to manage your period if you don't even know the basics. So we wanted to create a booklet that, you know, would start the conversations around periods. Lastly, we also, and this is also what brought us here. A big part of our work is advocacy. Providing products, you know, providing education are all important steps to creating, to solving the issue of period poverty and addressing menstrual inequity. But for real and long systemic change, advocacy is very integral. And that can look like many different things. One can be, you know, going into the legislature, advocating for bills, which I will talk about later. But it can also just be simple changes, right? Within your own families, being more open about your period, not hiding your period products, or, you know, maybe just having any kind of conversation about how you're feeling when you're on your period. A lot of times we just internalize, you know, whether it's pain or the fact that we're on our period, you know, because again, it goes back to that social and cultural feelings of shame and stigma around menstruation. So I'm going to jump right into the thick of it. A big reason why we also started a Maʻi movement, you know, in spite of everyone, you know, even our friends and family, they thought we were crazy. You know, why are you going to do this? How are you going to do this? And, you know, big question we got was, is this really a problem? Now, as I looked into the issue of period poverty in Hawaii, I will admit, you know, because I was already passionate about it, I thought, oh, for sure, you know, someone's doing something in Hawaii. I saw all these national statistics about it. But when I started to look and do research before we started Maʻi movement, it was almost like there was this data black hole. And, you know, being local myself, I also asked, right, well, this is happening on the continent. It's probably not happening in Hawaii. But once we started Maʻi movement, it was very clear from the amount of people that reached out to us that were sharing their stories. You know, there was anecdotal evidence that showed people had been dealing with this issue. It was just that nobody was talking about their periods. So the first thing that we did was, you know, I do not own this phrase, but I love it. This comes from Thaddeus Pham. He works from DOH. He said, "Don't get mad, get data." And so that's what we did to back up the anecdotal evidence. And the first report that we did was in partnership with the Hawaii State Commission on the Status of Women. So this is the first government report on period poverty in Hawaii. And what you can see is that 50% of people miss school or work because of their period. And that was related to many different reasons, right? It was lack of products, it was pain. So any kind of disruption that your period caused happened to 1 out of 2 people. Also, nearly 30% had experienced difficulty obtaining products. So cost was the number one reason, but other barriers were knowledge. So that's education, one of our pillars. Accessibility, you know, if you think of our whole state, right, there are certain communities that are very rural. You know, if they're the closest supermarket or, you know, the small store on the corner closes at 8 o'clock, right, then that person cannot get the products that they need. And then another factor, of course, was shame. Another part of our work is, you know, showing and sharing, right, how this affects people of any gender. In our
Nikki, I think your mic cut out.
Oh no. Okay. Which is it good now? All right. Maybe I'll come a little bit closer. I hope let's just pray to the Zoom God that it will continue. Um and another important statistic was the fact that 85%, nearly 85% of people did view menstrual equity as a real problem, like food and housing. Because if you think about it, right, you're not able to go to work because of your period, or you're not able to go to school. We can't advance ourselves. We can't support our families. So this is a huge barrier that, a lot of people don't necessarily think of. Now, the next, so what we did, right, we had this state data. We were already active in the legislature. And at that point, there was already a bill to make period products free in the DOE. But it was the same questions that we were getting. How do we know that this is a real problem? So, what we do best, I say, is always data, because I mean, the stories, they will always move us. They will move me. That's what keeps, us going and keeps us supporting no matter what. But to back it up, right, we ran a pilot in 6 schools across the state. We looked at K through 12 schools. We also looked at, different types of schools. So some in rural and geographically isolated communities like Ka'uhai. So we included schools like that. And then very urban schools like Farrington or Charter 1 schools. And what we really wanted to do was, of course, understand the logistics, what does it look like if I want to start, providing period products for free? But we also wanted to understand is why this is happening in our schools. Is it happening? And then what are the problems? What are the issues? And kind of teasing that out, and then also seeing what the impact is. So we actually ran 3 different surveys. One was at the beginning of the pilot, one was at the middle, and one was at the end. And in K through 12 schools, now again, this is all different ages. Kindergartners did not take our survey. It was towards menstruation age, but we did have some elementary students take it, since nowadays menstruators can get their first periods as early as 8 or 9. But we found that 8 out of 10 students had difficulty getting period products. Very similar barriers, right? Not having money for it, access to it, education, and also shame. But what we also found that was validated is there was a clear link between having access to products, and also absenteeism. So many students were missing school, or leaving, or not coming to school at all. And, same in the higher education. Absenteeism and overall student success, there are links to that. So that was something that we really wanted to address and also show in this pilot. What really made me cry as a mother is that when students didn't have access to products, they use leaves, diapers, newspapers, socks. I remember one story actually from Ka'u where, the students were in the bathroom for a long time, and the teachers thought, oh, these kids are messing around, so they went to go check on them, and they were actually trying to fashion pads for themselves. And they realized also that during the pandemic, when the schools shut down, these students no longer had access to products. So, during the pandemic, and that's when we started as an organization, it was really important for us to also get into these kind of communities that were relying on schools, to meet their basic needs. Schools, public places like libraries, they provide a safety net for vulnerable populations. So we always try to, center our services, with the most vulnerable populations in mind. And here you can look back at this slide later, but you can see by the end of the pilot, there was positive improvement and comments made about the impact of products on social and emotional well-being. So why am I here talking to all of you? It's not to talk about K through 12 statistics, but it is to talk about what's actually happening in higher ed. I wanted to share the state data, of course, to show you that as a state, we are looking, or there are issues with period poverty. The K through 12 was our first pilot, but it also laid the ground for what we're doing and what we're trying to do on the university campuses. Even when we were, working with the DOE, we were already talking to community colleges and universities. So we have been aware of issues with period poverty and menstrual equity, actually since the first year that we started as an organization. Now, last year we partnered with George Mason University. This professor, Dr. Gupta, she is the only person at this point in time to have conducted research releasing national data on the impacts to mental health because of period poverty. So similarly, I wanted to, run a survey. Same story, right? I know that this is an issue. People are telling me, students, teachers from campuses are reaching out for help, but I wanted to understand the data. So that's why we ran a survey with, in partnership with them. And what we found was, very heartbreaking. I know I say everything is heartbreaking. To me, it truly is. I'm very passionate about the topic, but also, it's very important to protect, our communities. And if there's something that we can do to help, that's why we're all here. But what we found in the University of Hawaii system, and the survey was conducted across the system. So we had 10 campuses and 3 education centers that were represented in this survey. There were 462 respondents. And what we found was that 43% of menstruating students in the UH system experienced period poverty in the past year. That is 3 times the national average. And 1 in 5 experienced it monthly, which is twice the national average. So we fared much worse than the continent. Also, Native Hawaiians experienced the highest prevalence of period poverty. And second were Filipinos. And if you are familiar with any state data, Native Hawaiians and Filipinos are typically the most marginalized and disproportionately impacted racial and ethnic groups. Now, among the students that experienced period poverty, so this was very important for us because, similar to DOE, we wanted to show, right, how does period or lack of access impact your studies and also your work. So we found links to academic and work disruptions, which, of course, it makes sense. You don't have products, you can't focus in school, you can't go to school, depending on your campus size, it might be very inconvenient for you to go to a place that may possibly have products, whether that's paid or free. Students also experience depressive symptoms. And what was really exciting to see with this survey that was new and different is we wanted to look at the connection between period poverty and basic needs. Now, we have always known, right, if you can't afford the basics like food and rent, then you can't afford period products. But it's almost like a silent assassin, right? Because nobody is talking about it. So we wanted to put that out and show, okay, how is it connected? And we found that students experiencing period poverty were 2.5 times more likely to experience food insecurity and 1.4 times more likely to experience housing insecurity. We also found that, if you were experiencing these insecurities and period poverty, it was an added mental health burden. So how does all of this translate, right? We're talking a lot of data, but what do you do with this information? And so last year, we introduced a resolution to make period products free in the UH system. Now, this is really important because, as a nonprofit organization, we were fielding a lot of calls and emails from students and administrators. And I said, okay, if somebody's calling me from Honolulu Community College and somebody's calling me from Manoa and somebody is calling me from Kauai, are all of these people talking to each other? And we realized that they were not. So we wanted to bring everyone together, right? And I mean, one was so that we can move forward together and address the issue. But two, it showed to us that this was systemic. If it was happening across multiple campuses, then something needed to be done. And so we went to the legislature, we introduced a measure. Now, just quick 101 on the legislature, the difference between a bill and a resolution. A bill is a mandate, it's required by law. A resolution is only a request. So the resolution that passed last year, there were 3 points: to provide menstrual products for free. The second is for each chancellor to consult with the student council to determine the type and amount of products. And the last is to submit a report to the legislature. So if you want to read more about this resolution that passed, I put all links in here, and you can look at the report and you can look more into depth. Now, because of this, the campuses over the past year have been taking action to implement the resolution. And at the moment, it does look like a patchwork of efforts, but that's why I was very happy and honored when Kalei asked me to present, because I wanted to share our findings that we got from the DOE pilot, and also bring together some contributions that our university coalition had put together and had come up with from their own experience. So jumping into the implementation, right? We say, okay, before you even start, it's important to understand 3 guiding principles in whatever action that you decide on. So the first is convenience. Period products, before, were only put in health rooms or nurse offices because people think, well, somebody needs to manage it, or this is a health issue. So just stick it in the nurse's office. But that is very inconvenient. I have been caught off guard, and the first thing, the first place I want to go to if I get my period when I'm outside, and I'm not prepared for it, is I want to go straight to the bathroom. Or, if I'm in an office, I would rather just grab it there and go, grab my pad or tampon. So convenience, placing it in multiple locations is very important. It reduces the time spent out of class or work. Next is easy access. So they should be placed in areas that students can access without any shame or stigma. We also do recommend that students of any gender, including non-menstruating students, should be allowed to take products without question, because if you want to help a friend, right, who is stuck or they can't get their products, then that should always be an option. Next is barrier free. Students should not have to ask someone, like a nurse, can I have a pad or a tampon? There's 2 reasons for this. One is, that's additional time if you have to ask someone for a product. But 2, it also can be a source of shame or stigma if you need to get this product. So just, I think in your Hawaiian center, you guys just have it out there on a shelf, so anybody can go in anytime and grab it without, asking Kalei, can I get a pad? Now, next, planning and implementation overview. So I broke it down into 4 steps, and the following slides go into more detail. But the first is identify a lead for procurement and funding. So how are you going to buy your products, right? Or if you're limited in budget, do you need to find a community partner, so that you can have a full running program? Next is identifying a lead on implementation. So who is going to help advise where we should put products and what kind of products do we need? It can be students, it can be somebody in facilities, student government, or an administrator. So once you have these 2 key pieces, you can move to the next step, which is identifying locations for distribution. So where do you want to put it? What is the most convenient for students? Next is, based on locations, meet with stakeholders to create a procedure at school. So this is really important, because if you don't talk to facilities, right, they're going to come into the bathrooms and they say, well, what is this? And we want to make sure that everybody is on the same page. So speaking with chancellors, your facilities, faculty, and students, even if it's just a small group, small working group, that will help you create the best procedure for your school. Lastly is to roll out informational materials across school. So using social media, your student news, any kind of memos or newsletters that go out. This is important because if you don't know that you have access to these products, then it can't benefit you. Also having signage, if you start off with having them in limited locations, right? Even just a simple map, like this is where the free period products are, that is already huge. This was something that we learned in the DOE as well. In that pilot, students in the beginning of the pilot, they obviously did not know where the products were. So it didn't benefit them at all. And so that was something that we worked on throughout the year. And, we played with different types of informational materials to see what worked best to get the word out. Now, for distribution locations, just in the interest of time, I'm going to skip over this one. I won't go into too much detail. But these were locations that have worked in other campuses, community colleges and universities. So you can also see, what facilities what locations would work best for your school. We also have examples of different types of containers. So you have a container and basket. You can, get simple ones and go to Daiso, or if you want to be gorgeous, you can get a La Hala basket. I really like that one. I thought it was so pretty. That's why I left it in there. There's also storage drawers. Even something as simple as putting a resealable bag in every single stall, until you can find something that works better. A lot of students actually like that because, you just go right to the bathroom and you can change easily. Depending on budget, of course, there's also dispensers. We have simple acrylic ones that are actually made by Farrington High School by this guy. Or if you can, there's also these types of free period product dispensing machines. So there are more, as advocacy grows, there are more and more companies that are making these types of machines. Also, if you have the older, stainless steel ones, you can also just work with facilities to, is the word to make it free, dismantle? I don't know. But to disable, that's it, disable the coin mechanism. I also go into the pros and cons here. But one thing so I will let you read that, at your own time. But one thing that's very important is making sure you have proper trash receptacles. So making sure that there are large trash cans inside, and even better, if you can get smaller ones that are in individual stalls. One thing that I was surprised to learn, but I'll just use this as an example. At KCC, they had the individual ones and then they got taken out for some reason. So part of their work when they were putting their free period product program together was getting funding to put them back in the individual stalls. So just take a look at your bathroom facilities and see, is it period friendly? Common questions we get asked are usually centered around these three: vandalism, excess use, and maintenance. With vandalism, there are going to be some instances of vandalism. Usually it's not any different from, if, incidents with paper towels or toilet paper. I will say that recently in social media, there has been backlash to putting in period products in the men's bathroom at Manoa. And sadly, I learned from Leeward Community College that somebody had, taken the container, thrown it out, and left a note saying, stick these back in the women's bathroom. They don't belong here. Now that's the first time that we've ever experienced that type of vandalism. So one thing, or I guess this does apply in both cases, is, just continuing that education, having signage. Why is this here? Who is it benefiting? And just, keeping that conversation going. The vandalism that we experienced before was more, people didn't know what the products were, so they were opening them and looking at them. But, I always say combat any kind of vandalism with education. So that will be a long process, but one that is definitely worthwhile in investing in. So as you create your signage, just keep all of these things in mind. Next is excess use. We always encourage everyone to take as they need. One of our best practices, which I will show, is making sure that you also have monthly packs, because there are people who just need a product because they forgot it or they ran out. The other is, if you have, more needs at home, making sure that you have, or that making sure that you are supported, whether you're at home or in school. And we did notice excess use in the beginning when we first started putting free period products. But once people and students know that this is something that is always here, it's not just here for this semester and gone the next, then that excess use does taper off. And the last thing is maintenance. So again, involve facilities early, so that you can make sure that products are being restocked on a regular basis, and making sure the units are always working. These are best practices that have come from the university coalition that we work with. So the first is sparking student-driven moments. I love anytime students get involved, because they're very passionate and very outspoken about what's important to them. So just make sure that, anytime you're creating a policy around this, make sure that it's student focused, and also that you have student voices that are involved. But one thing that I want to highlight, right, and it's a lesson as well, is make sure this is student driven, not student dependent. So students should be involved, but they should not be running it to the point that if all your students are gone, the program just stops. Of course, in the beginning, you may need to malama your program and rely on students to help you get to that point, but your long-term goal needs to be that this is run, on its own through the school. Because the last thing we want, right, is, students, they don't restock their toilet paper or paper towel. So the onus should not fall on them. There's a lot of high turnover, with students going, graduating or going to other campuses. So just keep that in mind. And then here is, another example of the take-home kit. So you can also have it next to your, container where people can take single products as well. Finally, our recommendations. First, I just want to kind of summarize everything that I've spoken about. First is location. So bathrooms are preferred over other locations. So try to, as best as possible to make that work. If you cannot put it in a bathroom for some reason, make sure that that there are locations near to the bathrooms. Next are products. Make sure you have a diverse option if you can. If you're a menstruator, that you use a variety of products. So pads, tampons, liners, having reusable options. As I said, Bella is there in person, and she brought cups with her. So we will also leave that with you. Cost-wise, you're looking at about $2 per student annually, and then less than $1 per student from year 2 onwards. And for planning, make sure that at least you have one bathroom in every building. If you have any early morning, or especially, well, maybe not early morning, but night classes, make sure that those night classes also have access somewhere. And maybe that's just in that classroom too. Next are informational materials with maps and locations, and always consider safety of the students whenever they're getting their products. Spread the word. So here are just, a list of ways you can get the word out. And then we also have templates that we've made for schools in Canva. So you can also scan the QR code to customize the template of your own. If you want to, pick certain verbiage or words, feel free. No point to reinvent the wheel. We love social media and student outreach. That's why we're all here today. So this is just, some examples of what the other schools in the system have done. And, Bella is amazing. She has also gone to, talk with students and student government. She's done a few outreach events as well. And what's happening this year? So there's Bella and there's Shayla. Sorry, Shayla is at Windward Community College. But there are two bills that are in the legislature this year. One is HB 2177, and the companion to that is the Senate companion is SB 2433. So if you want to read on those bills, you definitely can. We also encourage you to, use your voice and submit testimony in support of the initiative. And finally, this is just additional resources. So everything I talked about, I talked a lot about the DOE pilot. We put together a toolkit. So it has all of the information that I shared, from the data to, the hows and the whys. One thing I love is we made a worksheet. So there's a distribution plan. So you can also use this. And it just takes you through the 4 steps in an easy and simple one-pager. I also have links to all the studies that we've done. So the state report, the UH system study, and also the national study. So, okay, I wanted to give you guys more time for questions, but I think we're kind of good, and I'm happy to stay on longer as well. But I will open it up. Oh, and sorry, I shared this with Calais, but if you all want to take a look, here is the bit.ly link to our presentation that I did today. So you can also go back and look. I'm gonna just stop this.
So I'm gonna give, Jolene had raised her hand earlier. So I'll give the first question to Jolene, and then we'll open it up after that.
With your experience working with the colleges, where do you suggest that these baskets be? Is it in every bathroom? I think it being equitable in male and female with some explanation is fine. But I think the thing in our campus is about, security and vandalism, as it is everywhere else. Every floor, every bathroom. What are your suggestions?
Depending on the number of bathrooms. So first look at your total bathrooms, right? Starting off with how many women's restrooms do I have? How many gender neutral do I have? And then how many men's restroom that I have? Of course, the priority is going to be, women's and gender neutral, and then maybe select men's restrooms. But tackling these first, I would say, and especially if you do have, issues with, public coming on campus, I would certainly start in phases. So targeting, of course, high traffic areas, first floor bathrooms. And if you have, stairs or elevators, making sure you get bathrooms that are closest to those, the elevators or the stairs. So if you're going to start off in phases, right, do target those areas. I would also target a bathroom where you typically may run into issues with vandalism, with paper towel and toilet paper, because then at least you can kind of tease out what are the issues that you're experiencing, and does signage actually help deal with that? So I would start off with one highly likely problematic area, so that you can work that out before you roll it out, to the rest of the bathrooms. But sorry, I should say one highly problematic with, the high need, high foot traffic areas. So, obvious ones are, of course, the bathrooms, but then, putting in places like, where are my students hanging out? If you have like student centers, libraries, if most of them are there, then, put it in those areas as well. And like, I don't know, dining or cafeteria places. Yeah. So do a mix of everything. And then once you got your plan and you're like, okay, this works, this didn't work, then, do the rest of the bathrooms.
Anybody in the room have questions? There's more people than you can see on screen. They're hiding.
Okay.
Yeah, come up to the table.
I had a question about the resolution to the legislator. I found it interesting that point 3 was a report to the legislator. Does that report hope to be an advocacy piece to advocate for more support, or why did you put the report to the legislator as number 3?
So actually, Senator Kim had put that in last year. She wanted the University of Hawaii system to report back to the legislature on what they did. So she wanted to know in a year, what kind of progress has each campus made? So if like when you have time, you can go to that link and you can read what each campus's chancellor is doing. And part of that was, well, because we just had the hearing for the actual bill, the part of the reason she wanted to know what was in the bill, or sorry, what was happening in the campuses is, is the system as a whole taking enough action? Where are the gaps in support? Whether that be, is it an implementation and policy issue, like there needs to be a consistent policy across the campuses, or is it a funding issue? So it's just trying to identify, right, where the pukas are. So that actually came up in our hearing when Representative Peruso did ask. She said, I can see in this report this kind of hodgepodge of efforts, but what she wanted to know as well was, what are the funding sources for everything, and is that sustainable long term?
Question?
Oh, I see more people.
To zoom it out.
And I see Bella. Yay. Okay. Hi, Bella.
How about on the Zoom? Does anybody have a question on the Zoom? Feel free to add it to the chat or unmute yourself.
I have another question. I know you mentioned that a little bit about how you kind of didn't want people to go see other people to get an item. I'm sorry, you did mention something about that, right? Like it's
Yes.
kind of like
Yeah.
a privacy issue thing, right? I guess how do we work around that if that's been a suggestion on campus?
So it's like and that's a great question, right? Because we're all used to, and this is probably more in the K through 12 age, right? You go to the nurse if you need something, right? Because that's kind of what's ingrained in the school system. But, in higher ed, right? You could just go to the Hawaiian Center, right? You could just stop by there. Like you have a lot more freedom in movement. So that's kind of what we mean. It's like, if you're going to put it, Kale, I'm picking on you because you're hosting this. But, if Kale wants to offer, or she does offer, free period products in the Hawaiian Center, it shouldn't be behind a desk, right? And again, maybe it was put there, like maybe it was put on a ask only basis because you didn't have a consistent supply of products, right? So you were, just trying to maintain your supply and only giving to people who really desperately need it. But that, again, that's a barrier to access. So that's why we say, if you can, put locations, like just put it on the shelf in the classroom. One school, this is not a higher ed school, but it can work on your campus as well, is the teachers also have signs if their classrooms have free period products. So they may have some students, again, it can be very disruptive, to your classes, but they have students that as they're walking by the bathroom, they just come in, grab it real fast, and then go out. So that's something that, works there. So that's what I mean. Like you shouldn't have to ask someone.
Anybody in the room have questions?
Gas dispensers. Oh, I see something in the chat. Nikki-Ann, I believe you mentioned someone made plexiglass dispensers. Are these available? If not, oh, that's so cool. If your school can make it, we have a sheet metal and plastics program that might be able to integrate it. So we partnered with a local guy, to make these acrylic dispensers, we actually don't have any, like that's not part of our normal nonprofit operations. But I can connect you all with him. His name is Mike. He works at Progressive Plastics. By now he knows if you just say, oh, we want the period product dispensers, because before this he was making all the shields for COVID, and then I met him and now he's helping. We just refer people to him, so you can always get a sample from him if you want to try and make it on your campus, or what could be fun is posing this to your students as well and saying, hey, come up with a design that you think works for on campus. And even if you make different designs for different bathrooms, that's a cool initiative as well that they can do. Because there are different styles of dispensers. This was just one that was easier for him to cut. So I'm happy to share. And actually, you know what? I'll add that as a slide. I'll put his contact information, but I'll put screenshots of other styles that I've seen from around the world that, yeah, maybe your students can make.
We have a lot of old sneeze guards. That would be perfect.
That is cool. I love that.
What about the capping? In alternative to tampons, do you see in the future some partnership with the sustainability commissions to have, rather than the tampons, the cappings, the caps?
No, absolutely. So even when we drafted the DOE bill, I made sure the language said limit, including, so menstrual products, including, but not limited to pads and tampons. So I made the language purposely vague so that the DOE could purchase other products. And in the first year, they only restricted it to pads. And I'm happy to say that this year, so I planted that seed with them as well, that long term, this is what you want to do to support your students. And so actually this year, they have allowed schools to purchase period panties, not so much cups at this point. So that's why even in the first year of our organization, we started our sustainable Maʻi program. It is a bit more, you have to just be more mindful because of course, everybody's sizes are different, right? For period underwear and even for cups. So, today Bella has probably 3 types of cup. There's teen, small, and regular, and you would need to take a quiz. But no, we are always trying to introduce people to the ideas of reusable period products because, as I said before, there are barriers. There's education barriers about how do I even use this, accessibility, where do I get it from, and then finances, right? So we try to take that down. But yes, please also on your campuses, continue that conversation with your students.
Any other questions?
I have a Honolulu Community College specific question. I have a Honolulu Community College specific question, so I'm not sure who can answer. But where is the funding for our free products coming from?
Did she say where's the funding coming from for Honolulu Community College?
Yeah, so that I think we would have to check in with Derek and facilities on that one. And then we do have now stations on campus, so vending machines that are free. And then I'm happy to see the suggestion about signage because you can see now on different parts of campus where to obtain products. So mahalo to facilities, O&M team for installing those for us. They're really nice.
All facilities. Oh, I would love to see what your signage looks like. If we can use it as an example. I love to highlight, when schools are getting it right.
I'll take a picture for you.
Is there signage directly on like the restroom or office, or is it
Inside,
other places?
yeah, in the
direct you?
restrooms. Yeah, I've seen them in a few different places.
Okay, good.
And all of this is really important because what it really comes down to is a core part of our work, right? We just want to normalize menstruation. There's nothing to be ashamed about it. It happens to half the population, and it's a normal biological function. But no one should suffer, unnecessarily or in silence because of their biology or household situation. So that's something that, is really important to our work. And, there's a lot of pieces, and I know I spoke about a lot of things, but, just keep that in mind as you're building your program.
I have Derek here. He can answer the question about how it's funded.
Hi, everyone. I apologize for not being here earlier. I had to address another issue out at Arrow, but the funding is going to be from our operating budget, the school's operating budget. We're going to just cover that cost. I think there was also another inquiry through Laura's office asking about the total number of how much the total cost we spent so far and how much we're budgeting for it next year. Those numbers I haven't gathered up and we haven't decided yet, but we're going to get it to Laura by the deadline of next week or something as to what we're gonna be doing. Also wanted to acknowledge and thank the student life area for the donations that was provided. Okay, any other questions you guys got?
Thank you, Derek.
Thanks, Kale.
Okay, so we are at the top of the hour. So I did want to thank everybody for coming, both in person and online on the Zoom. And especially mahalo to Nikki-Ann for that really informative presentation, and Arabella for coming over and hauling all these kits for us to share with our campus. For those of you who are attending online, please make sure you complete the evaluation and sign in on the links that I'm going to post in the chat. I'm also going to put the link to Nikki's presentation and their website so that you guys can access that too. Oh, there it is right there. In addition to that, for everybody who's online that wants to get a Maʻi kit, I'll share the instructions on how to pick that up. But thank you so much to everybody for joining us, both online and in person. And thank you to our guest speakers. Mahalo nui.